All right, we're back in session. We're still talking about budgets, and our first contestant is the coroner's office.
Well, hello. So I guess we'll talk about, we'll probably start, if you don't mind, with B budget. Okay. Discuss, I guess, operational cost. I think for the most part, we tried to keep the budget pretty close to what we had. We put a little bit in there for inflation. I believe we asked for $5,000 in for operating supplies, $3,000 for travel, $1,500 based on past repairs for vehicles, $4,000 for increased cost of fuel. Let's see, $300 for the cell phone, or for a telephone. Increase for another air card for a iPad, and then we added $21,000 for an additional lease vehicle, $84,000 for increase, or I guess $84,000 should have been the total for increase in autopsies.
40,000.
What's that?
It should be a 40.
Yeah, it was a 40,000 increase. I think they have 84.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think that 84 brings us in line with what we ended up budgeting this year
Right.
with that 40,000 transfer.
Right. I think that's what we ultimately will end up with.
See, and that's for autopsies and all, toxicology, all
yeah,
your stuff on that too.
Autopsies,
Yep.
toxicology, everything. Yep.
Okay.
So, you guys have questions about that?
How are things looking with ISU?
How are things looking?
Yeah, with that.
They're
Braden had
finishing trying to get the MOU handed off. They're waiting for some radiological material to be removed from that site. They're waiting for their pickup to get the hot box out of there, and then once it's there, then they're there. We had a meeting last week with all of the deans. That was the first dean meeting, and actually I think that was the most productive meeting that we had because that was all their, they just need the MOU with us and then they're ready to roll.
I think all the radioactive stuff will be out this week, right?
Yeah, they thought it'd be gone. See, and then their funds become available July 1st, and they will just look at writing us a check for the 900 grand and however we need to do
I've got an
that.
email.
Yep.
Yeah, I've got an email from Jen
Okay.
on that, and I just haven't had a chance to respond.
Yeah, we told them we're starting into budget, and they understand. To tell you the truth, they're going to be gone for.
She said she's gone till after July 4th.
Yeah, you have most of the year. This is when all their staff takes their time off, and then they have the new dean of what's
Research.
Dean of Research, Vice President of Research, because Donna was just the interim. But they're all coming in, and they all see what's going on because a bunch of them now have been doing research into what these programs actually do across the country, and went, oh, wow, So yeah, they're fired up.
Okay.
So we're a year out from that, probably?
No, you'll probably start into construction this fall, or maybe a little sooner. It depends on if they would have had all the radiation stuff out, but that's taking them a little bit longer. But we'll start construction operations and as fast. And then Jeff was working with ISU and those guys for hiring for when they start going through and getting ready to do something. And there'll be a panel put together, and once that MOU gets signed, the governance structure gets signed. So yeah, you're going to probably see in the next 2 months it kicking off. So.
Okay.
Okay.
Then A budget.
A budget, let's see, we requested for a new position as far as, be a medical legal death investigator. I believe that comes to be $48,173. That, I believe, is the only thing that we requested there. And that's basically, as far as operation goes, currently we're sitting at 293 cases as of yesterday. All of those cases, there's 2 of us, we're 24/7. So to try and do that operationally is pretty it's pretty tough. It's, he's got vacation coming up. I've got training in Vegas that I've got to be to. The idea is, what are we going to do when we only have one person? Because if he has an autopsy or he has something, he's got to be in Boise while I'm at training. We have nobody to cover the county. There's not enough time. I mean, that's just operationally, as far as coverage goes, we're treading water right now. We've been very fortunate and very lucky, but the reality is we're treading water. Between what we do, we investigate death every day. There's got to be, when you look at the longevity, there's got to be some time that you can step back and go be with your family and not do this day in, day out, because this is what it's requiring. I will say, out of those 293 cases, we have 10 of those, and this is year-to-date numbers from January until yesterday. Out of those, we have 10 autopsies. So when we think about it that way, we're doing pretty good in regards of 293 cases worked. We've only had to order 10 autopsies. And those are hit and miss. Depends on the investigation, right? If we go in there and it's pretty definitive, then yeah, we can rule on it. If it's a drug death, those aren't definitive. It's very difficult to say because of the way that they present, not to mention the fact that we have a forensic standard that we're trying to live up to. We can just run toxicology, but it puts us in a predicament too, because if we get that toxicology back and it pops zeros, we've already gotten rid of the body. It's either cremated or buried at that point in time. That's our evidence. And most autopsies, most drug overdoses are happening between the ages of 20 and 40 years old. Between the ages of 20 and 40 years old, you don't have much medical history. So it doesn't leave us a whole lot of room that if we do send toxicology off and we come back and it pops zeros, now I'm having to dive into medical history to see if there was any pre-existing conditions or any reason as to why this happened. You look at the time, it's 2 weeks, puts us at a huge disadvantage to be able to come up with a definitive cause and manner. That's also why the forensic standard is to, if it's an apparent drug overdose, they still want to go to autopsy with it.
What do you guys got, what, about 10, 12 a week is what you're doing for investigations? Is that kind of your average?
Yeah, roughly. I mean, I know we were, forget my numbers, but I mean, that's 293, that averages out.
Yeah.
I mean, some weeks we'll go and it's one a day or one every other day, and then we'll go over a weekend, we'll catch 8 in a weekend. I mean, it fluctuates. And so it's just a matter of trying to catch them as they come. And it's staggering ourselves and running a schedule that we both run the office and have that public accessibility, so when people do want to come in and talk about cases, reports, whatever is going on, we can do that. We can afford them that ability, but then we're also on call 24/7. So how to do that, how to structure that is putting us in a predicament as far as how do we do that. And then when somebody goes on vacation or somebody goes to training, we're running the office one person for an entire week or better.
And that's the whole thing too, is as ISU comes online, you need, typically most of these offices that are about our size counties have about 3 people in them plus. I mean, there's usually, you figure that you have somebody on call, you have your primary, somebody on call, and somebody who's off, or however, and you rotate that through.
Well, and when we run numbers for this, just so you guys are aware, based on our caseload to what we're working, we figured we were at 2.7 worth of people hours.
Yeah.
So we're already over the 2 people that we have working for hours, just what we're putting in now.
Yeah.
So that's where we're already at now. That doesn't account for where we're going to see the increase over this next year.
Or decrease?
Or decrease, yeah.
Optimistic?
But let's be realistic.
I was going to ask you, what's the trend death rate?
It fluctuates. That's very difficult. I'd love to give you an honest answer, but I've done this for a year, so it's very difficult to give you that trend. I could pull statistics, but they wouldn't be for our area, and they wouldn't be.
What is our numbers over the last 2 or 3 years? I mean, how many deaths?
And that's why I've pulled all of my numbers are hard numbers, and they're from this year. So from January till now, because of the fact that I don't know how they tracked their cases last year. I don't know how they were keeping track of their numbers. I don't know that data. And so, to be fair, on all accounts, I don't know what they kept track of, what they didn't keep track of, or how they took their numbers. So I want to make sure that I have hard numbers to give you guys, that it's fair and it cuts both ways.
Believe Eli would come in and present to us.
Well, and that was
on a
about what-
regular basis and tell us exactly what everyone.
He was having about 10 cases a week is where he
Right.
was when he'd come in and was briefing us. And so, I mean, we're inside of that. And now, in that 10 cases, that's all non-attended
Right.
that you guys are required to look into. Now, a lot of those are going to be pass away, old people, natural causes, whatever,
Sure. But even those cases, everything
still
that
have to
we're
respond.
doing, we do with the idea of transparency,
Yep.
right? So everything I do, we use our new computer system that it's not new, it's just we went in and took extra training to figure out how to be better at it. So we went paperless to try and save money, so we're not buying all these file folders. The way they did it before was they were creating a file on every single person. So all of the medical records had to go in there, all of the imaging, all of everything had to go in there, and then we have to hold on to them. There is not we only hold on to them for 5 years, then we can get rid of them. So the idea is to be able to go digital. So we went digital with the iPads and everything. We're taking our pictures, we're digitally uploading all the handwritten notes, all the medical records. Instead of having them faxed and then scanned in, they fax over, but then they automatically go into a file folder to where we can electronically move them over. So we keep all of our files electronically, so they have everything from the photos, the handwritten notes, medical history, everything that we get documented on scene goes into that file. So if any one of these cases ever need to be reinvestigated, you have everything that you had from day one. And we have the ability to be transparent with the people that are asking us, well, how did you determine this cause and matter? We can go back to them and say, well, this is the way they presented, this is what we found, this and this and this. That is where we need to be operating, because you never know. If new information comes in, they say, well, hey, there was a rash of homicides, we believe that this actually fits. We didn't know it at the time, new information. This gives us the ability to do that. And working within the forensic standards is where we need to be at, especially where we're bringing a forensic autopsy facility here in Bannock County. We need to be living within those standards as well.
Well, and so what I was saying is so we're at, in that 10 whatever, and if you're at your 2.5 employees, 2.7.
Right.
That's, I'd start looking, when ISU comes online, it'll give you a little bit of reprieve from having to drive to Boise.
Sure.
That's the big thing is you're not in Boise then to do that, but still you're going to be in that same.
You're still going to
That
be
same ballpark.
You're not getting time. I mean, regardless whether we're going to Boise or whether we're in town, it saves us a little bit of drive time. But the fact that we still have to be at that autopsy so that we can answer the questions, because when we go to an autopsy, we're the eyes and ears for the doctors. Between the notes that we put together and the case we put together prior to, so that they have time to prepare, we also need to be there so that they can ask questions on that, because that's their interpretation of what we give them. They see the picture. They don't, outside of that, if they have questions or concerns about what we saw or how this, we need to be there to answer those questions too. So just because we don't have to go to Boise doesn't exactly negate the fact that we don't need to be there. We still need to be there.
Just saves you drive time.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm getting back to is if you don't have, you're still going to look at, where are we at? The employee rate, that would be one of the employees then that I'd put to the top of the list.
That's the deal, though. We're looking at every department and everybody's needs.
Well,
And everybody is important.
And that's why I say if it's not an employee, we need to figure out how. Like I said, we normally only hire new positions. Is what an average is about 3 a year. Is normally all that we ever bring in the county of brand new created positions. The prosecutor got one year. Last year? Last year, I think the sheriff's office got 2 last year. But then every department will go and that's where it's. And so I put that one in then and put this one towards the top. But then
This is our fifth
request.
employee
Yeah.
request, and we've only done a handful of meetings.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
So normally we'll get 25 or 30 requests for employees.
Right.
We'll go through and do it. Like I said, this one will probably need to be towards the top. But yeah, and like I said, we'll just have to go through and see what kind of wages we have because it comes out of the general fund monies just like everything else. Because this is an ongoing expense.
Well,
Once you create this position, this isn't something that you get. This is not like we won't have a grant that will cover this. This is a straight up tax dollar request. So that's why it's
the idea of this is we met with HR, we spoke with them in creating this and thinking about this because we looked at the reality of got two people, if they're working 24/7 and they're being overworked, and eventually you're gonna get burned out. And this is not one of those, hey, we'll just throw somebody else in the position. It's a specialized position that requires training and a special person to be able to come in and do this and look at what we see every day, day in and day out. So we have to understand that there's training involved. We don't want to lose that knowledge and that ability to do this job. So we have to respect that and make sure that we're taking in their mental, capability and, understanding, and so that they can take away from this, so that we're not just going to burn people out. Because as we burn people out and bring them in, got to get them trained, got to get them certified. They have to be able to. Some of these cases we work, we have to go sit on the stand in front of prosecutors or defense attorneys. We have to be able to stand up to what we're doing, and we have to be credible. And that's where the office and the integrity lies, is making sure that we have the proper people doing the proper work. And we've raised the bar of education by doing the ABMBI certifications and everything, so that we're walking that line to get to the point where we can become accredited. Currently, we've never, in the history of Bannock County, had anybody ABMDI certified until now.
And I did talk to Tori about, this will be a non-exempt position. So we tried to work out how the hours would work,
Yes.
because they can't be on call. They can be on call, but they'll have to be working. They'll be limited, they're not gonna be non-exempt, so they won't have the flexibility that these two do.
Well, you make a good argument, and just say that, but I'm not committing to anything
Oh, yeah.
with anybody at this time.
I mean, we still got
That's-
sheriff's office.
that's where we're
and-
at.
I mean, and that's just how it works. I mean,
No, I understand.
like I
that.
said,
Yes.
it's gonna be between sheriff's office and prosecutors and,
Well, in developing this budget, I've taken into account of what we've dealt with, right? The Downers case, everything we need to do to just run this office on the day-to-day operational phase. So the only thing that we asked for is what we felt that we need
yeah.
as we progress. We didn't ask for anything other than that.
And we appreciate that, and that's what everybody's doing.
Right.
I mean,
And I
As-
did,
as we go
sit
through
down
that.
with Christie prior to, and we did a zero budget. We went, and, we made sure that we're not just, there's no fluff, we have extra money here, but we're just choosing to we're not doing that. This is what it is, and we're giving you all we got.
Yeah.
this is your first year through the budget, and
Yeah.
and you'll learn that we look at everybody.
Absolutely.
Everybody
No, I
100%, because everybody's needs are vital.
Well, and
To the function of the
you brought
county.
up a good point as far as, when we're talking about facilitation and things, that's probably something that we need to have a better idea of, is just an open line of communication. Because if you guys are looking to move us or, go somewhere else, those are things that will add up and there'll be a cost in the future. And how we grow this office, whether it's the equipment or operation or anything, because right now I can tell you, I would love to have a morgue cooler, and I know that there's things in motion up at ISU, but again, that's going to be a third-party deal. And right now, our third-party contract with Portneuf isn't working out for us too well. It's actually causing some issues, and we need to figure out how to be better about that, because we're using their morgue facility, and twice now, we've had bodies up there where they've either called me, and I've had to go up and take those bodies out of there and move them to another facility, which right now is Wilkes, because they're the only ones that have the facility space, or the real estate, if you will, to take on that. But it opens us up for a chain of custody deal in our cases, and we have no way to rectify that. So those are things that we need to think about as we progress, because investigations that we're in charge of, we only have Portneuf. And they told me, one of the incidents was, well, we know you had a body here, but we were cleaning and sanitizing one of these other coolers, so we defrosted this cooler. Well, what they didn't understand was, yes, there's 3 units there, but they're all run on the same refrigeration unit. So when they defrosted that one cooler, they sent our body into its decomposition process, which made it bloat and started that, which really messes with our case before we get it to go to autopsy. So these are things that are outside of our control, because we use third-party vendors to do things, because we should be able to do this on our own. So I guess the ultimate goal is getting trailers, getting these things put in motion. I know that that's all takes financial planning and figuring out, and so I guess this is the way we want to do it. That's part of the reason we're looking into grants and different facilitation of that, is because I'm trying to do my best to do my part to offset those.
Well, and the big problem though is we want to demonize a third-party contract, and I understand, I used to work for Portneuf. We're writing into place, like with ISU, they're gonna have a 600 square foot cold room that you can have that in. And how we write those agreements and what we do is a much different thing than having, just the deal with Portneuf, because Portneuf is Portneuf, and that's just gonna be dealing with Portneuf, and we
Well,
get
and it's
that.
really not about Portland, it's any third-party
That's-
vendor. Even if we go to this, we have one cooled facility, what do we do when that goes down?
Well, the same thing that we do right now when we have a cold facility that doesn't go down. And this is the one thing that I get really frustrated with a lot of entities that want to talk about redundancy and secondary precautions and secondary measures, is when we start talking about the assumption of risk, the assumption of budget, the assumption of funds, we start allocating funds based upon when and what the likelihood of something will occur. When is the last time that our morgue collapsed? Well, we don't have one. Okay, so we have a morgue. Okay, so you have secondary, tertiary. Okay, where do we go with this? We have a third-party vendor that we're setting up that will be, if the legislature had their will last year, they didn't have time to do it. This is going to be what, they will be responsible for all autopsies in the state. You'll have Idaho State, you'll have Boise State, University of Idaho. That's the three locations that you'll have all autopsies done in the state of Idaho. That's where they're going to be done at. No discussion. We won't even pay for them. They'll be paid for by the state. Somebody dies, you need an autopsy, you drop them off, you pick them up when they're done. That's basically what they're looking at doing. That's how the state is going to go to this.
Sure.
That's what's working through. So they're trying to take all of these things off. So I have a real hard time as we start investing funds to know